So it's a pleasure to have you guys with us. Maybe a quick introduction from all of you. Alessandra, you're stepping in for Dea, who unfortunately had to cancel because of illness quite late. So thank you so much for stepping in.
Thank you for having me.
Maybe you can take it away first.
Thank you. So I'm Alessandra. I'm the CEO of Fintech Belgium. We are a non-profit organization representing something like 135 fintechs, insurtech, wealth tech, accounting tech, you name it, active here in Belgium, including Wise, actually, a brand new member. And we have like 3 main missions: is to promote these fintechs, to represent them towards the regulator and other stakeholders, and at the European and Belgian level, and then to make the magic happen here in Belgium. So organize events as well, share information, expertise, and so on.
Fantastic. Well, welcome to the panel. Magali, always a pleasure to have you back in Belgium. Can you briefly introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. My name is Magali. I lead all policy and campaigns for Europe, Middle East, and Africa at Wise. For those of you who don't know Wise, we're a global tech company. We've been, for the last 12 years, I think, building the best way to move and manage your money across the world. And we've now got 16 million customers globally. We offer an account with local account details, basically allowing people and businesses to become a local wherever they live in the world.
Fantastic. Bulent, last but not least.
As always, pleasure to see you, Robin, and with a great set of speakers. I'm the founder of Colendi. Colendi is an embedded fintech company where we believe every company will be a fintech company, but acquisitions are crazy, so we create JVs with retail, telco, and other kind of companies who have customers.
Great, and you're quite international, but originally out of Turkey, now in the UK.
Yeah, originally Turkish, and we have a Wauters in Turkey with 15 million plus users, but now we are expanding our services to UK and Germany. We'll see how it goes.
Fantastic. Well, welcome all of you to the panel. We're going to talk about open banking. For those who don't know, open banking is basically the concept where people and businesses can access their financial data, not only through the silos of their traditional legacy organizations like banks, for example, but also use third-party providers, innovative startups and whatnot, to access that data, to have a better front end, a better user experience, to also do different things with their money and the way that they manage their finances. So that's a concept that's not new. I think originally it was even in the 1980s, if you look it up. There were already quite some experience in Germany. But Europe and UK has played a leading role in making sure that open banking has become as established as it is. What I find interesting about open banking, and this is especially for you two, you cannot build these kind of services without going against the banks and the traditional finance industry, because you sort of compete with them. But at the same time, you have to partner with them, and you need them in many ways. So I find that a very interesting dynamic, sort of competing and partnering at the same time. What's it like in the field? Magali, maybe you can do that.
I think there's basically 2 answers to that question, like whether partnering with banks is good or bad, or whether we feel like we need to or we don't. One is a slightly more positive answer. The other one might be slightly more whiny, so apologies, but I will give them to you both. So on the one hand, I think we partner with banks because it's just the best thing for customers. And I'll give you a little story to kind of back up my point there, but basically, we at Wise, we offer our service to banks called Wise Platform. Banks can integrate our service very easily, but that idea didn't actually come from us. It came from a bank. Because at one point, we saw a massive influx of Hungarian customers, and we couldn't figure out why. And then we dug into the data, and we found out that there's actually one Hungarian bank who had just been sending their customers away from using their own service and just pointing them to Wise. They were like, you'll just get a much better deal. If you go to Wise instead, it'll be much quicker, it'll be much better, and be much cheaper. So just do yourself a favor, and us as well, because it's expensive for us, and it's slow for us. And frankly, it's a lot of effort to serve you with these cross-border payments, so just use Wise instead. So that gave us the idea of partnering with banks, and ever since, I think the rest is history. We've now got 60 partners all over the world, and I think ultimately it's just because customers want it. We know that customers won't come to Wise all the time. We have to go where they already are, and in most cases, that's just the bank account that their mom and dad signed them up to when they were young. And that's completely fine, and we will go there, and banks will adopt us. So in that sense, I think it's just ultimately an insanely positive thing. But then on the flip side, if you'll allow me the whiny answer, it's just that we have to partner with banks, because in many cases, the regulation just isn't up to date. Because there is still this requirement that you need a banking license to do some things that you shouldn't really be needing a banking license for. So in that case, we partner with banks, for example, when they need to do payments on our behalf, because we can't get access to the payment systems directly because we don't have a banking license. So it's a bit of a must, really.
So sometimes because you want to, sometimes because you have to.
Exactly.
Right? And you're kind of in the same boat because you partner with a bank. A bank is even an investor in Colendi. At the same time, you're sort of competing against them. So
I don't want to say compete, because banks are incredible creatures in their like compliance, governance, regulation, and legal-wise, they have to be very, very strong in any country, like Chase in US or Barclays in UK, or in Turkey, BBVA, whatever they are. They have a lot of like strong arms. But at the end of the day, the banking is also changing. Digital services, embedded fintech services, banking as a service platforms. These, I think, are now requirements to, like, you have to store the money for the customer, you have to move the money for the customer, and if you are lending or investing on behalf of the customer, you are a bank. So there has to, as Jamie Dimon said, you have to have that kind of skill set. So there was a balance there, where we see like existing banks didn't have the technology. All the new fintechs were therefore like creating a lot of hype and actually acquire incredible amount of users. But at the end of the day, the regulation and as well a lot of other infrastructure plays, security kind of details are now much more important than ever. Like fintech, crypto, or blockchain-based technologies all have a lot of common sense there. And there's like $7-8 trillion of financial services profits to be shared with like big banks and as well great fintechs, like a lot of them we see as the moment. But the thing is, the end user, the consumer, the customer really doesn't care about if you're a great product or if you are a great bank. Do they solve my problems? Do I get my like immediate requirements in need? Yeah. So this is there. So I guess this is why embedded fintech and as well these kind of services are gonna be a new game-changing model.
That should be the end goal, right? Serving the customers and the businesses.
Exactly.
Alessandra, you see this at Fintech Belgium, of course, this whole dynamic between banks and startups, all of which are members, of course, in the organization. Have you seen that relationship between them evolve over the last few years?
Completely. And I mean, we're coming from seeing them as a threat, let's kill them, let's buy them, to now we have to collaborate with them. And what we see, I mean, in Belgium, again, what we see is that this trend of having finance everywhere, you were mentioning embedded finance, open banking, we see finance like going everywhere and not just in financial services actors. And therefore, everyone and everything is going super fast. Faster and faster, and so what we see is that the banks have to evolve faster as well. And I mean, you know the size, you know they have indeed, you said, all the customers, whilst the fintechs tend to be smaller, and the customer acquisition cost being super high and the cycle quite big. What we see at the moment is a switch of trends in the fintechs, or the B2C tend to go towards B2B. So we have like the back to business kind of thing through white labeling, and that enables now that enables them to sell their products to banks, who will therefore be more faster at innovating thanks to the fintechs. And so there we see really strong collaborations. And yeah, in the coming years, I think it's going to be a even stronger thanks to open banking and open finance specifically.
Yeah, super interesting dynamics, I find. You mentioned open finance, which is a great segue because I was just going to mention that open banking is sort of evolving towards a little bit more broadly open finance, where it also touches things like insurance and pensions and whatnot. Is that just sort of a global trend that everything is sort of becoming more decentralized, or is there more at play here? You know, is it just because customers are demanding to have access to all their financial services into one app or one service provider, or is it just the market dictating it?
It's, yeah.
Whoever wants to take this
I think it's many-folded. It's customers. I was talking about the speed of things. You have the regulation itself. So the actors asking for it, the market are asking for it, and yeah, I don't think it's just a customer asking for this. It's the world we are evolving in, and. Now you've seen that PSD2, you were mentioning it, PSD2 open banking has led the way, paved Europe and UK have paved the way to a more connected world and faster world. And but the now what they have, it was logical because it was quite limited in terms of scope. We were just talking about payment accounts. And we needed to expand the scope to investments, to pension, public, private, and so on. And yeah, this open finance is only the logical step forward to the open banking. It was needed if we were going to cope with the rest of the world, because UK and Europe have stepped the first benchmark, but the rest of the world has innovated. They haven't waited 5 or 10 years after that. 1 or 2 years later, you had Australia and Brazil. Like, so yeah.
So Bulent, we had an interview a couple of weeks ago where you talked about exactly this, because you offer so many things as Colendi, and I was asking, isn't it better to focus on one thing rather than try to tackle both like insurance and all of these things? What's it like in the field?
The thing is, as we mentioned, I don't think that Apple loves to offer like lending services, but it's profitable and there's a need there. So they collaborate with Goldman or other guys and create some incredible experience for people. Klarna did that very well, Affirm did that very well, but at the end of the day, these were all required by the customer or demanded by the customer, consumer. Credit, there was this credit thing. So I think payments, like the layers are payment, credit, invest, or insure. These are all packed. So it has to integrate each other. And I guess this is why this open banking situation creates an incredible opportunity for like Walmart created a JV with Ribbit Capital, where they created Walmart One. And this was like a crazy thing because millions of users now can access any kind of like banking services through Play, where Visa wanted to acquire a couple of like quarters ago. Yep. So I guess there's an incredible like war zone at the moment. PayPal's numbers are, from my perspective, great, and they are doing incredible things. Square is doing great things. I believe there will be a lot of clashes in the ecosystem where we'll see. So what I believe, the embedded fintech and banking as a services and open banking services create that for the benefit of the consumer, the end user. This is why I believe all are integrated, and there is an incredible amount of opportunity for this ecosystem. But
let's hope so.
We better not forget FTX, SVB kind of stuff. So in everywhere, the regulation is there for the benefit of the end user again.
And I'll come back to regulation in a minute, but I want to ask, within Wise, is that this whole shift from open banking to open finance, is that being talked about? Is that like a topic of discussion within Wise?
Yeah, it definitely is. It's something that we're following very closely. It's just very important, I think, that we get the basics right, though. And I think everyone gets really excited about open finance, and quite rightfully so, because I think there's loads of opportunities and lots of ways in which we can actually empower consumers to make better choices, get smarter advice, and so on. But that's still a little bit in the future, I think. Even with open banking, we do see that the take-up is really limited because of the way it's been implemented. Like there are different standards all across Europe. It actually becomes really complicated and really hard to do this and to integrate with all of these different banks, especially when the quality of their APIs isn't always as good. You have to rely on loads of different parties to plug yourself into the thousands of different banks that are there across Europe. So yes, I'm very excited, and Wise is super excited, but let's do this right from the start.
Yeah, there's a market reality that you can't get around, right? But it's quite interesting because regulation-wise, I think the UK and the EU played a pioneering role in many ways, like implementing PSD1 and PSD2 later on, quite early in the game compared to the US especially. But at the same time, if you talk to companies in this space, especially the innovators, they're also quite frustrated by the lack of speed and sort of the lack of standardization. How do you think this will evolve in the next few years? Is it going to get better fast, or we would just have to deal with the reality as it is for the next few years?
Yeah, we have, so at Fintech Belgium, we also launched the European Fintech Digital Finance Association. So we have like 13, 15 hubs, European hubs, working, I hate the word lobbying, but you know, talk together with the European Commission and Parliament. And what we've seen is that PSD2 indeed has a big handicap in terms of harmonization of data sets and stuff. But it comes, and it's only payment initiation and I mean, payment account, whether initiation or information, but the open finance is broader. It's going to touch a lot of things, but not payment. And so I think that it's going to keep coexisting. And what we've heard also in the conversation with the European Commission is that PSD3, we can't hear anything about it anymore. So it's really a focus on open finance and PSD2 staying a little bit as it is. I think that a lot of lobbying has been done as well from the banks, and because they have invested a lot of money into developing PSD2, and so it needs to stay as it is, even with its handicap. But it's not a bad thing because some fintechs, like you know, API hubs, they rely on this handicap to be the ones facilitating. But then I think that open finance is both of them are going to coexist because open finance doesn't touch anything that is payment related. And yeah, so they will have to coexist.
Yeah. Magali, is that also your experience?
Yeah, I think so. I think all will be revealed on the 28th of June. We're all eagerly awaiting that mammoth day of legislation exposure. But I think, well, I mean, we love PSD, right? Like we were born out of PSD1. PSD2 was a massive step in the right direction. I think we're excited to see where PSD3 gets us. I think there's loads of loopholes that PSD3 can close, including our biggest passion project to finally get transparency in cross-border payments, obviously. But then going forward, I think with open finance, there's lots more that can be resolved through an open finance framework that can never be resolved through PSD3. So I think the Commission is going about this in the right way. We just have to see what they come up with.
Yep. Okay, my last question before we wrap up. There's a lot of pressure on the markets these days, both on the private side for late-stage companies and in stock markets. That affects fintech quite heavily because that's our biggest and fastest growing sector here in Europe. What's it like on the inside? How does it feel?
It's hot here. Actually, the market is incredibly changing from quarterly at the moment. But I believe all these improvements in the ecosystem, and then as well, a lot of bad players are dropping because there's no free money for you, and there is no acquisition and retention cost, unit economic level knowledge. If you don't have that kind of stuff, there's no way that you can live or suffer for the next phases.
Certain big ones don't even have a UK banking license in place.
We heard that as well. We'll see how it goes. But the thing is, as we all know, there's $7 trillion, $8 trillion of yearly profit to be shared by big banks at the moment. And PSD2 and 3 are going to be on our side if we have the open finance integrations. And I guess central bank digital currency or other systems are also in place to be disrupting the ecosystem as well for the incumbents. We'll see how it goes. But I think the market will be much better in a couple of quarters later.
Do you agree with that? Wise, of course, being a publicly listed company.
I think we'll end up with a much more robust and financially sustainable ecosystem after a while. There will probably be a bit of a cull of companies who haven't been sustainable, who haven't focused on becoming profitable or setting themselves up like on a path to profitability. If they haven't discovered that by now, then I think they will struggle. And that, I think, will be a really interesting trajectory for a lot of VCs and for a lot of companies. So all in all, I think we will definitely end up with a better ecosystem off the back of this volatile period.
Thank you. Super interesting conversation, which is also why we ran a bit over time. Apologies for that. But thank you so much, Bulent, Magali, Alessandra, for joining us.
Thank you.
Very interesting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.